to NIF-T, the Notable Insights and Financial Trends Podcast. I'm Caleb Wilson. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 2. Episode 1, for those of you that listened, to make it a little more interactive, we brought our very own man mortgage product guru, Rod Rohde.
Whatever.
Thank you, man. Welcome aboard. So MSR, a subject that we talk about a lot in this industry. Acronyms come up a lot. Mortgage servicing rights, obviously. Also referred to as sometimes SRP in different circles. I get a lot of questions on MSR. What is it? I try to explain it, and one of those things that happens is the eyes just glaze over. I go a little bit deep into the conversation, and they kind of go to the nod and smile, and then I don't get any questions. So I know you and I have talked about it quite a bit. I know you talked to a lot of loan officers, and I wanted to bring you in to really maybe offer at least 5 minutes on what it is, why we care about it in this industry, why it's such a big topic, but maybe some high-level elements of the complicated pieces of it. So
sure. You want to define what mortgage servicing rights are?
Sure. It's kind of in the title.
Yeah.
But I did actually hear someone say that it wasn't what it says it is. So obviously mortgage servicing rights, we talk about a right to service a mortgage. It's effectively, and there's no license, which is kind of unique. So you think of a right, you think of, a license, you think of the ability to do something. It's not really exactly a piece of paper that says I have the right to do it. It's really a blessing. And that blessing is at a loan level. The blessing comes from our different agencies, Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie. Sometimes private investors can also grant a right to service a mortgage. But that right comes with an obligation, as do many rights, and also a benefit, right? So the question is, do the benefits outweigh the obligation, really? And so we start to talk about what the obligations are. Well, you have to service the mortgage, if you believe it or not. So that doesn't sound like much of an asset at first. You say, well, I have an obligation. That sounds like a liability that I have to perform a duty. And so you think about Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie. They're not really in the business of having an enormous cube farm of people dialing and calling to collect payments and escrow payments and do all the elements of what we all know is embedded in servicing a mortgage.
Yeah, so that's work. They don't want to do that.
No. They do what lots of people do, and they outsource it to the people who know those borrowers better than others. So people like Man Mortgage or entities like Man Mortgage can come in and they can say, well, I have the appropriate net worth, I have the appropriate controls in place, I have the appropriate things, and you can get the approval to be a servicer.
So that means collecting the payments, handling the customer service phone calls, collections, defaults, collections.
That's interesting you say that. A current mortgage servicing right is an asset. Let's talk about how that's really done today. Like, for example, how do you pay your mortgage? Do you write a check?
Oh, no. Online. I'm straight autopilot.
Online auto pay. Right, obviously. Auto pay is the way to go. And that's the vast majority of borrowers these days, as you might assume. The collection efforts on a current mortgage are very easy these days compared to years ago where you're opening everything's a check. Everything might be on, a phone call, an emergency, Western Union, your mortgage. Like, none of that happens anymore. Almost everyone's on some form of auto pay or ACH type transaction, right? So if the loan is current, it's pretty simple. And so why I said it's interesting, you said default, collections, that side of it, when you get into that delinquency state, the asset quickly goes from being accretive to a liability. It goes from positive to negative.
Accretive? If you're throwing around words like that, I'm going to start taking it as disrespect. Start making
I have
up words.
To spell it?
No,
ask me to
So what is accretive?
So beneficial.
Beneficial, I like that. There we go.
All right.
Have a sip of our coffee for the knowledge words. So one of the things that I think is important that a lot of people in the mortgage world don't realize, it became super important in 2020 with the COVID things, is for the servicer, one of the responsibilities, how is the responsibilities in terms of payment to the bondholders different between Ginnie Mae, which are FHA, VA, USDA, and Fannie Mae loans?
That might be a good episode for 2, because when we get into some certain types of bonds, we get into terms like scheduled, actual, and what those really refer to as remittance cycles on how payments made from the borrower or required to be made, and then how ultimately that servicer turns around and pays the bondholder through Fannie Freddie. So how they remit payment through those investor reporting cycles has a lot to do with principal that they paid versus the interest. So that's when I say scheduled or scheduled actual, we talk about print and interest and what components have to be treated differently. It's probably a little bit beyond what I would say our 5-minute introductory your introduction video for a mortgage servicing.
But the quick version is, on an FHA VA loan, if the borrower doesn't make the payment, who makes the payment?
The servicer.
The servicer. On a Fannie Mae loan, if the borrower doesn't make the payment, it just doesn't get paid.
Well, it depends. So there's different types of securities for different investors. And so generally speaking, Govy product does require that the servicer will advance interest and print on that security.
Which is one of the reasons why Govy loans have different pricing than conforming.
A higher risk, correct. Yeah. So delinquents means we can make their mortgage payments for month after month. So that became a big part of just to wrap that part of this up. Mm-hmm. When COVID happened and we went into the forbearance logic, one of the things that really made the market contract immediately was when we talked about wide forbearance on the concept of Govy loan. And so the MSR actually kind of across the board, MSR just contracted really quickly, like overnight. And this idea that, who's going to make those scheduled payments for potentially month after month? And at that point, we were looking forward to COVID. It could have been months and years. We had no idea. And so no one, in fact, MSR that used to be worth calling a point really dropped down to almost nothing.